to Jules My Tools. Today, this is our final session in solving two-steps equations with the distributive property. And in this session, we're working through two parentheses. So if you're excited and ready to go, let's get started. Okay, so today this is our final video on solving our two-step equations, and just like we did in our previous video, all of the working for this question will be done within the question. So I feel that at this point you should be ready to work along with us and work through the question without having to branch off to the side. But if you're not there yet, and you still need to do that, by all means, do your working to the side and then plug them back into the question. So we're going to be multiplying 4 times 2w, which will equal to 8w. And then we're multiplying 4 times 8, which will equal to 32. So now that we have applied our distributive property on the left-hand side, we're now going to do the exact same thing on the right-hand side. And our 9 will be multiplied to w, which will equal to 9w. And 9 will be multiplied to 5, which will equal to 45. So now that both parentheses on both the left and the right-hand side of our equation have been simplified, we're now going to move into collecting our like terms. So what I'm going to do is I'm now going to kind of move my 9w over to my w, over to my 8w. So since 9w is positive on the right hand side of our equation, that means that when I move my 9w now from the right hand side over to the left hand side, we're going to subtract that 9w from 8w. And now in looking at our next term, I'm going to bring down my 45. And in looking at my 32, since 32 is being added, I'm going to now subtract that on the right hand side of the equation. So now let's simplify. So when 8w minus 9w, this will leave us with negative w, and you could say negative 1w, but remember that even though the 1 isn't written, remember that we still have a 1 in front. So remember that negative w is equal to the same thing as negative 1w. But in algebra, we have to remember that that 1 isn't always written. So now when we have 45 subtract 32, this is going to leave us with 13. So now to apply our final step, remember that we have that negative sign on our w. So that means that I'm now going to be dividing. And since I'm dividing for this step, I will write in the 1w. Just in case there may be a bit of confusion, I'm going to write it in so that as we simplify, you will understand where I got the negative 1 that I'm about to use in my equation. So I'm going to be dividing both sides of my equation by negative 1, and that's so that I can cancel off that negative sign that's on my w, because I want my w to be positive. So negative 1 divides into negative 1. That will leave us with 1, which is how we got the w. And when negative 1 divides into 13, this will leave us with negative 13. So for this equation, our w is equal to negative 13. So now let's check our solution. We said that w is equal to negative 13. So now let's apply our substitution and plug in my negative 13 everywhere that w appears in our equation. So if you are one of those persons who are not strong with negative numbers, this question is really going to challenge your skills today. So now let's simplify our left-hand side of the equation. So we have 2 times 13, which will equal to negative 26. That will be added to our 8. So negative 26, when added to 8, will equal to negative 18. And then our 4 times negative 18 will equal to negative 72. Okay, so now let's begin simplifying the right-hand side of our equation. So we're going to be multiplying 9 times 13, which would equal to our negative 117, which will be added to 5. So now let's apply our distributive property. So 9 will be multiplied to negative 13, which would equal to negative 117. And then 9 will be multiplied to 5, which would equal to positive 45. So now that we have applied our distributive property, we're now going to move into our calculation of our integers. So when negative 117 is added to 45, because our signs are different, that means that we're going to subtract the numbers and then we're going to be keeping the sign of our larger numbers. So when 117 subtracts 45, this will leave us with 72. And since 72 is the larger number and 72 is negative, my 72 will be negative. So we see that on both sides of the equation we got negative 72, which tells us that our W equals to negative 13 is the correct solution for our equation. Okay, so I hope this video is very helpful to you. I hope you were able to apply the skills that you've learned so far to work along with me and do all of your working within the equation. If you are not there yet and you still have to do your working on the side, by all means, do what works for you. And when you're ready to learn a new skill, make sure that you return back to Jules Math Tools, where we make math easy.